Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of 10 for the Chairman. For those that you don't know, this is where I take 10 questions submitted by our subscribers and answer them to the best of my abilities. Subscribers are the subset of our backer community that put a little extra money every month towards our ability to do enhanced content for the whole community. So things like the Jump Point magazine, things like 10 for the Chairman, Wingman's Hangar, a bunch of the other stuff that we do is all sort of financed by the generous contributions of subscribers, so thank you very much. This is where I'll answer the questions. I just wanted to also say thank you very much to Track and Peacemaker, who are both fire captains down in Orange County, and they stopped by. I got a nice cap and a couple of challenge coins, so they stopped by to have lunch with Ben today and said hi. Very nice. Very nice folks and backers, so it's always really nice to actually meet everyone that's helping make this happen. So anyway, so thank you very much for that. All right, so let's get to the 10 questions. So the first question comes from Apple Crow Scythe Racer. So I don't know if he's a Scythe Racer or Apple Crow are two people at the same time, but asks, will players or orgs be able to run their own medical facilities? Could we perhaps outfit a larger ship like a Caterpillar Starfarer Idris as a mobile hospital? Could we offer those services to other players? So yeah, the short answer is yes. I'm not so sure whether necessarily a Caterpillar would be able to have it or a Starfarer, but we're already building in an infirmary in the Idris, and there'll be some other ships that will have medical facilities on them. And I think I'd mentioned before in one of the previous 10 for the Chairman, one of the sort of game mechanics we thought is that when you're boarding, if you get wounded or injured, especially you take a critical hit, if your friends manage to drag you back and get you patched up, you won't actually lose that life. So it'll take you a bit of time before you fully bleed out and like lose a life or die. And so one of the game mechanics will be sort of, taking your wounded comrades back and getting them fixed up. And so if you, have either successfully captured a ship with a boarding action or unsuccessfully, and you got some shot up teammates or you're shot up yourself, then you have to go and find some medical facilities in a certain period of time before you will bleed out and lose a life. And so that could either happen aboard a ship or depending if you're a pirate, maybe sort of some dodgy back alley doctor. But we thought it would be a pretty interesting mechanic. So the answer to that question is yes. Next question comes from Raven, who asks, if someone is wanted dead or alive and you blow up their ship and they end up in the hospital with a cyborg arm, per the Death of a Spaceman mechanic, they still had lives left, do you get the dead bounty or not? Do you have to capture the mark most of the time, perhaps gravely wounded, unless you get lucky enough that they're already mostly cyborg and croak after you vape them one more time? Yeah, I mean, basically the dead or alive thing, if you have a bounty against someone, if you manage to kill them, essentially capture them and take one of their lives, you'll get the bounty. So it doesn't mean that they have to have their final life and it passes on to the next of kin per the Death of the Spaceman. It's basically, I've gone after you, I blow your ship up and it blows up with you, even though that may just knock as one of your lives and you may come back with a cyborg arm or something, that will definitely count as a bounty for you. Okay, next question comes from Arg, who I'm guessing is maybe a pirate. Who asks, if a multi-crewed ship such as the Constellation is attacked unexpectedly and crew members are in a section which is breached, will they expire, assuming they're not an EVA suit 24/7? So it sort of depends. If the section is breached and there isn't a bulkhead that's keeping like the atmosphere in, and you don't have an EVA suit in, then yes, you have a small amount of time to get a suit or get to safety before you will die from asphyxiation. And that will actually be potentially part of the gameplay, because we'll also let players change things like gravity zones on ships and space areas of ships for decompression as defensive techniques or offensive techniques. Okay, next question comes from Domcat, with a capital O in the Dom, by the way, who asks, hi Chris, tablet support was unlocked as a stretch goal many millions ago, but you never mentioned how you think they will work. Have you and the team had any thought on what the use of tablets will be, such as an extra screen or a way to mod your ship in and out of Star Citizen and access stores, or maybe a real-world Mobi-Glass, for example? Also, any ETA on the release of the app? So we were thinking in terms of the tablet support would be more an app that you could log into your account, manage your inventory, sort of look for work, sort out future missions with friends, sort of organize basically your kind of like business dealings or personal stuff, but not so much obviously fly, because right now tablets aren't going to be close to as powerful that we need to do Star Citizen, but sort of more like a sort of personal management. So I mean, I guess you could consider it like your sort of Mobi-Glass version, other than the fact that it won't be augmented reality the same way the Mobi-Glass is in the game. And we have talked about having like a sort of second screen support, like you're in a ship, potentially some of the screen stuff can go from the cockpit onto a second screen, but we haven't really done much with that, and that's certainly, I don't think that's going to be a primary thing at the beginning. It'll probably be something that we can add on later on, because we've got a lot of other things to do. So look for the app to be mostly about managing your possessions, jobs, missions, friends, setting yourself up for when you get on your desktop and start to fly around in space. Okay, next question comes from Rabbit, who asks, as a leader of the mercenary company Rabbit's Raiders, it is my responsibility to make sure that my squadron is combat ready. One thing that would certainly help us practice would be multiplayer mission editor for the simulator PvP arena. Does CIG currently have plans to create a user-friendly mission editor to create custom scenarios? So that's a great question. Not off the bat on the dogfighting module, but I wouldn't rule that out later on down the road in terms of allowing people to build their own sort of encounter maps for Arena Commander, because that would be fairly easy to do. I mean, the only caveat is that the modding side of the tools require a lot more sort of polish than sort of our internal dev tools. And so in terms of those getting in people's hands, our current schedule is get the game out and then sort of get polished sort of modding tools out after the game. Because we make it work to a certain level, but then you got to make the interface better and a whole level of robustness. So I'm not so sure it would be easy to do that sort of ahead of that sort of schedule, just because we would be taking a significant chunk of basically the editor that you use in CryEngine and have it modified heavily for what we're doing. But I wouldn't necessarily rule it out. So especially if we build some kind of like mission builder, like sort of separate app, that could possibly happen. So we'll think about that. It's a good suggestion. Can't promise it right away, but long term that would definitely be a goal. Okay, next question comes from Cam, who asks, will the various systems have to obey the laws of orbital mechanics? That is, will a solar system's components be orbiting its sun? Therefore, if I leave a planet to do something off-planet, the planet will be somewhere else in orbit when I want to return. That's a good question. We've actually gone back and forth on that one. So originally we were thinking, well, it's cool, but maybe it's too much of a pain, like for instance, to always have to sort of navigate back, is the planet still there or not? So initially we're leaning against it, although we're now moving to a full double precision system map, which means that we can essentially cover millions and millions of kilometers. And in that system, each sort of entity, whether it's a planet, the sun, asteroid field, will have their own sort of location, and we probably will be able to, and if we want, to orbit them around, and then you would sort of travel locally. But we haven't made a full decision whether the planets are static or they're actually running on some orbital path. Although doing the orbital thing may be pretty cool. So that's definitely something we're considering. Before we were thinking we wouldn't do it when we had a more fixed system map setup, but now our system map is sort of on one fixed scale and has the ability to be more dynamic. We're sort of reconsidering that. So no decision made yet, but potentially it could happen. Okay, so Wolfhelm asks, will flying in a formation provide any benefits such as a reduced radar signature? I don't know, that's a good question. I don't know whether formation would mask how many ships are in it. I mean, Mark Abern and Paul were the two guys that worked on the radar, so I could ask them. I think we'd have to program it to be that way. So I don't know. I'm not sure whether it would also help or not help, but I don't have a good answer for that one. Sorry. Okay, next one comes from Lamavras, who asks, have you already started looking at VAs to do the voice cast for the Persistent Universe in Squadron 42? And VAs would be voice actors. If so, can you give us a hint at who to expect? So unfortunately, I do not want to answer that yet. We are going to have some pretty interesting actors and some fun ones. Bring a couple of people back that have worked with me in the past, and then maybe also get some new interesting ones. But until we've sort of got that cast and done, we don't really want to announce anything. And that's sort of predicated on getting the script finalized. So we're deep in writing the Squadron 42 script. I think it's going to be a really great story, and then after that we would be doing the casting seriously. But it will be some pretty, it'll be some fun people, let me put it that way. Okay, next question comes from Star Spartan, who asks, "Hi Chris, I was wondering how the team will be handling the borders of the known systems. For example, will there be an invisible barrier if one were hit the edge that would just stop the ship, or would my ship just keep going?" Yeah, I don't think we're really going to have any borders. I mean, it's one of the reasons why we're moving to double precision on the system, so we don't really have the same kind of precision issues we have at floating point. I think we would probably just have you fly in endless open space, and then maybe at some point you'll run out of fuel. But we wouldn't stop you at the edge. I think it would just keep going. So I guess that's the answer on that one. All right, last question comes from Live Vodane, who asks, "Will scams be possible allowed in game? Will we have to be always suspicious of other players and their intentions, thus keeping us in a state of constant paranoia of other players? Or will there be a mechanic to make scams impossible? For example, why not allowing direct player-to-player sales and forcing players to buy and sell only from NPCs?" So that's a good question. I mean, so there's a couple of things to consider there. One, trying to make the universe and the system feel as realistic as possible. Also, sort of protecting people from people abusing the system for outside reasons, like gold farmers and stuff. So we were thinking that there would be sort of several levels. We'll probably let you trade between players. There will be some level in most of the cases of sort of a tax and trade between players. Very similar, like if I right now want to give my car to someone, I would have to sign the title over to them, and so there's a cost to signing the title over. And we will have that type of mechanic for a lot of sort of the trades. I don't know, on the player-to-player sales, we definitely want players to be able to sell to other players, so we're going to allow that. Depending on where you sell it, you'll obviously have to pay the taxes to your local place for selling, just like you would have to pay sales tax if you were selling to other people here, like where I am right now in California. Because I do want players to go and collect really cool things on parts of the galaxy and take them to other parts and sell them to other players for convenience. I think we'll sort of use the same system that we were talking about for the mission ratings, where both the seller and the buyer can rate each other, whether you're a good seller or whether you're a good buyer. And so obviously if someone has a good reseller rating, then you feel more comfortable than if they don't. And of course, buying from NPCs will probably be the safest of all the things that you can do. So I do think, to a certain extent, you may or may not have to be suspicious of other players, although when a player's selling to you, it's not quite the same as it is in the real world here, because if you're going to buy and sell it in our game, you probably would have to be face to face with that character, and once you sell it, the item's going to transfer. So it's not the same as I purchase something, give someone my credit card online here, and then the goods never show up, because we handle the brokering of the system. So we'll sort of make it so people can't scam each other as far as that stuff goes. So I think it's going to be better than real life, but we do want to keep a little element of real life in there, where there could be the potential for some players to be more dishonest or try and screw other players over, and there's a pro and con to that, just to make the game more interesting. And maybe that's sort of stuff that can only happen in the unregulated border worlds, or you couldn't do that in the UEE, say on Earth or on Terra, because on Terra you'd have to go through an official broker, and then you can't cheat in that case. But maybe you don't need a broker out on an outlaw planet, and so you may do that transaction because it's going to cost you less because it doesn't have the same taxes and fees, but then the risk is maybe someone screws you over. So that's kind of the risk or reward that we're sort of thinking about and playing with, and we want to build that into the game, which I think will sort of make it pretty interesting. So there you go. That's 10 questions. Rather quick today because we're working on Arena Commander, trying to get it out. A lot of stuff to get done because we are essentially shipping a sort of mini full-featured space combat game. So thank you very much for being patient, waiting for the dogfight module, and thank you to all the backers out there that have generously backed this project, allowing us to make this game at the level and ambition and scope that we're making it at. And again, thank you very much to the subscribers out there that are enabling me to do this kind of content, and us to do a lot more sort of community content. And I will see you next week. Bye.